In Japan last year, 48 people lost their lives to handguns. In Great Britain, 8. In Canada, 52. And in the United States, 10,728. God bless America.
It's a powerful and a disturbing ad, but why I played that tonight was I want you to consider that that aired in 1981, right after the murder of John Lennon. And then America's gun violence totals, you heard the numbers there, have grown exponentially since then. The problem has gotten not worse, a lot worse. Guns and how to limit gun violence. It often grabs our attention after major incidents like, of course, the murders of Newtown, but go back to Aurora or Tucson or you name it here. Unfortunately, lately in recent years, there's no shortage of mass shootings to grab and compel the attention. But as I said a few days ago, it's only about 5 weeks that the nation's attention will focus on an issue before something else comes along. Maybe this time will be different, but it's in that window of time here that we insist, or should at least, that our leaders do something different this time. But every day, as we know, is not just a mass shooting, it's a deadly day in this country. Take a look at the following. This is just a list. Just some of the gun murders in the U.S. since the Newtown shootings this past Friday. The list includes the murders of a 50-year-old Topeka, Kansas police corporal, David Gogian, and a 29-year-old police officer, Jeff Atherley, both shot and killed in the line of duty on Sunday. What about 15-year-old Demetrius Cruz? He was shot and killed Saturday in Denver. And the 4 dead in a murder-suicide in Longmont, Colorado on Tuesday. How about a 47-year-old, Mary Eskew, shot and killed by a 14-year-old during a home invasion near Tulsa, Oklahoma on Tuesday? Trust me, I could go on and on with the names, some young, some old here, but all with a commonality that they died at the hand of a gun. You see, gun murders, they are nothing new in this country. 27 innocent lives were lost Friday, as we know, in Newtown, but every day across this country, on average, 33 people are gunned down and murdered with a gun. Well, it's not an easy number to put in perspective, so I want you to consider this. The 33 gun murders every day, more people than combined starting lineups of the Giants and the Yankees, more than the average class size in American public schools, and it's more than all the lives lost in the massacre at Virginia Tech. When it comes to gun violence in the U.S., we suffer the equivalent of a Virginia Tech every single day. And as I said at the top, the numbers are only getting worse. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates, get this, that by 2015, only 3 years, more Americans will die from gun-related causes than from car accidents, making gun violence the single largest non-medical killer in all of America. Well, let me bring in my panel right now. Joining us, Dominic Carter, political journalist, author, Evan Stavisky, a Democratic strategist and a partner at the Parkside Group, and Andrew, who we've already met. Evan, I'm going to ask you what I asked these guys at the beginning of the week, and I'll ask this of lawmakers that we'll have on tomorrow. I hear all the words, but do you have any belief that this time will be any different, that there'll be meaningful, not just, periphery language, but real substantive changes to the gun culture after what we saw in Connecticut?
I mean, my immediate reaction is to say, God, I hope so. But the reality is we live in a cynical age, and maybe some of that cynicism comes through when I look at this objectively. The reality is there probably isn't a great desire to actually enact something in Washington, and we need to have, as Governor Cuomo said, we need a national solution to this. Some lawmakers are coming out and actually supporting common sense things. In the LA Times today, a federal judge, Republican, appointed by a Republican president, who presided over the trial of the man who shot Congresswoman Giffords and everyone in Tucson, came out in favor of reasonable, sensible gun control. But the problem is it probably doesn't get action in the U.S. House of Representatives. Even if they can move it through the Senate, it's the House where it probably comes to die. Much like in Albany, common sense things like micro-stamping probably can't make it through the New York State Senate.
Unbelievable. Andrew, though, whenever there are major changes, there's usually some common impetuses that are behind it. Public will. Every poll we look at, including NRA members, agrees background checks. Majority of Americans, the vast majority, say, let's ban the assault weapons. We also see that the idea of these high magazine clips also, that the majority of the American public wants. Politically, I don't think it's good politics for certain Republicans, not all Republicans, but for certain Republicans not to get on board with at least those 3 items. And as we know, sure, there's principle and sure, there's heartfelt pain by every American, I would hope right now, but there's also political survival. And if people know there's an issue that's going to kill them, think about what's going to happen in immigration in this country. Republicans want to do something about it because they know, and they see the demographics, they will not survive long term if they write off an entire ethnicity. To that point, am I naive to believe that those 3 specific items, background checks, assault weapons, and those high ammo clips, I think they can get something done. I think they can get it done in the next 60 days.
I'm sort of with Evan on this. I hope you're right. I'd like you to be right, but I really have serious doubts about it. First of all, the numbers go up and down after incidents. So, 5 weeks after Newtown, the numbers are likely to slide back down to where they were. And it's not a campaign issue that we've heard that's been used as an argument against Republicans very often by Democrats. There are very few Democrats who have won by hammering the Republican challengers on gun control issues. And keep in mind that Republican candidates are being held to the ideological zero tolerance policy by the NRA.
But if I follow that logic, Andrew, Manchin, Harry Reid, and other Democrats who are NRA-friendly Democrats would have remained mum. They came out and said, we got to do something different. From states like West Virginia, Nevada,
less damage to Democrats in those states. A Democrat in West Virginia suffers less than a Republican in West Virginia would.
I hear what Andrew says, Dominic, and part of me unfortunately thinks he may be right, although I would bet my money here that we're going to get changes through because it feels different this time than even some of the others. But more than that, I think a lot matters what happens tomorrow morning. The NRA is going to have a press conference. They've gone into what they call the duck and cover routine after a shooting. They take down what's on their Facebook page here. They distance themselves. They go radio silent. Tomorrow they're going to say what they think. And we have indications that while they might be dressed up with some sympathetic language, which I believe they feel, they're going to basically go on offense against those who want to have harsh restrictions. If they do, I think they will play right into the hands of people who say enough is enough. Do you agree?
1,000%. The NRA must offer some real concessions tomorrow. And I really believe, call me naive, but I really believe that they will. It will not be enough. It will be insulting if the NRA just gets up there and blames Hollywood, the violence from Hollywood. That's not going to cut it. Number one target for Americans is the NRA, and I venture to say I'm a cynic as well, 25-year critical in terms of not believing, what comes out of elected officials' mouths. But this one is different. Little children, multiple funerals every day. I can almost guarantee you'll get 2 out of the 3 of what you said. You're going to get a new ban on assault weapons. It may sunset a few years later. And you're also going to get a ban on these gun clips, or I don't know what the amount will be, but over 10, 15 bullets. You're going to get at least those 2. The NRA, there's no defense. What's the defense?
But when it comes to the NRA, I think you are setting yourself up for a bit of a disappointment. The 4 of us, we've covered or been involved in politics for a long time. We follow this. We all know something called take out the trash day. Where you generally, if you have bad news, you dump it out on a Friday because it gets lost in the political bleed and people don't get around to reading the newspapers on a Saturday.
Not this time.
But think about this.
Not this time.
Think about this. The NRA had a week to respond to what happened in Newtown. They're picking the Friday before Christmas, which it's not only take out the trash day, it's the ultimate take out the trash day.
But Andrew, let me just tell you, sometimes we rightfully will say some folks in news can't find this story or put it together with 2 hands and help. You're going to have little caskets tomorrow, and you're going to have the NRA doing a press conference in the morning. A chimp could put the story together if they're tone-deaf language. You will have no shortage of people that are going to come out in support of this, because who doesn't relate to having either a 6-year-old, whether it's their son, daughter, niece, nephew, and everything else? This is one of the most relatable tragedies that everyone gets their hands around.
It's relatable, but the NRA is operating from inside the shadows tomorrow.
And I also think while legislation is key, it's also about cultural norms. You see the differences in the way things were handled at Dick's Sporting Goods, which banned the sale of assault rifles, versus Walmart, where sales of high-capacity magazines were flying off the shelves in anticipation of the kind of ban that Dominic was talking about.
But you heard Joe Scarborough, okay? And Joe Scarborough, as we know, one-time Republican congressman from Florida, as he says, the Panhandle area, he said this is going to be like the Latino vote and other issues that sunk Republicans in November. If they don't get out ahead of this thing, they're going to regret it because of the changing demographics in the country. Do you think he's right?
Well, I think he's right, but I don't know that he's right everywhere. I was a consultant to the New York State Senate Democratic Senate Campaign Committee this year. One of our most highly contested races was in southern Queens, Rockaway, Howard Beach. Senator Joe Addabbo, who was being challenged by Eric Ulrich, a New York City councilman. The Republicans spent millions of dollars, and one of the things we used to go after Ulrich was his opposition to an assault weapons ban, was his position on guns, and this was before the tragedy. So there are voters in particular areas who are willing to hold somebody accountable for taking steps, for refusing to take steps that protect the lives of our families. But does that apply just in New York City, just in the Northeast, just in concentric circles from Sandy Hook? Or is it something national, as you say, in the Panhandle?
If one thing happens, if the faces of the movement here to change it are just the president and Joe Biden, you might be right. But if cops get out in front of this, law enforcement, if a victim's family gets out in front of this, if, as we saw, doctors coming out. Yeah, but you know what? I hear the words and I see the petitions, but other than that Jersey City police chief, right after 3 years ago when his cops got shot down, it depends who the voices are. And I think the voices don't just come from New York or from LA, but they come from Middle America, South, and the Midwest. Then I think that things change, and I think they will.
And I think you're right, and I think the new head of the Brady campaign, Dan Gross, got his start. His brother was shot in the Empire State Building. He previously ran a group called the Center to Prevent Youth Violence, which I had the opportunity to work with. They attempt to change societal views towards guns, try to change the way people view it the same way that views towards smoking change.
And don't forget about MAD. You know, how drunk driving, the perception changed after that. All right, we take a quick break, everybody. But one of the key components to this tragedy was mental health, and specifically how mental health services here are all of a sudden being under the spotlight for what's working, and more specifically, where the help isn't getting to folks that need it. We're going to get into that after this.